Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. As the thumbnail says, today what we're going to be doing is powder coating my brakes so I can actually get back on this 18Z project that I started like a year and a half ago. I fitted everything on the car, I got everything to fit right, but I just never got around to actually installing it on the car just because I didn't powder coat it. So today we're going to go ahead and prep everything, take it all apart so we can powder coat it. So stay tuned. If you guys missed the video last year that I did on fitting these onto the car, go ahead and check that out. These are Brembos off of Volkswagen Touareg or Porsche Cayenne or even the Audi R7, I believe. They came in different versions. These are the 17Zs that actually fit onto the IS300. What we need on those is to get the actual brackets from Overkill Engineering. So if you want to check out that video, I'll go through all that whole process on actually getting this fitted on the car. So on today's video, we're going to go ahead and just take this all apart and powder coat it. In addition to powder coat it, I'm going to go ahead and rebuild all the calipers with new seals. I'm going to go ahead and do that on a separate video. I'm going to just have a dedicated video on rebuilding the calipers. So check that video out if you're interested in rebuilding the calipers. As you can see over here, some of the hardware and the actual crossover lines, I had already powder coated these gloss back off camera. These brackets from Overkill Engineering were just bare steel when they were cut, so I went ahead and powder coated these just to make sure they didn't corrode or rust when they're on the car. So they're a nice gloss black now to provide some protection once I get it on the car. These are all the little brake hardware. I went ahead and just coated all those. Those things actually were brand new and they started oxidizing while I had them in storage. So I just went ahead and cleaned these up and powder coated them also. Over here, I have some plugs to plug up all the holes that I'm gonna have open. For the most part, I'm just gonna leave the bleeders on here, but the spots where I don't have a bleeder that fits into there or enough bleeders to work. In addition, over here, I've got the high temperature tape that you're gonna need. So once I take all these pistons out, I have to tape up those spots so I don't get any powder in them. Alright, after I took off all the pistons and seals, I got grease all over the calipers after I freshly sandblasted everything clean. So now I'm going to have to go ahead and just take these outside, spray them all off with brake clean just to get all the grease and everything off, and then I'm going to bake them in the oven just to burn off all the old grease before I powder coat them. So I went ahead and cleaned it off. I used my super clean foaming spray aerosol here, and it helped get all that grease off that we got all over the caliper. So right now it's just all clean. I was able to clean all the old brake fluid inside there too. So I'm gonna go ahead and hit it with brake clean right now because brake clean evaporates a lot faster and it dries a lot faster. I just used this to get the grease off because the brake clean, I was just worried that the brake clean was gonna go too fast and wouldn't get all the grease off first. I baked these things in the oven for 20 or 30 minutes just to burn off all the dirt and grease and everything else and all that stuff that I just cleaned off. And it turned out great. So I've basically gotten all the contaminants out of it. So now it's ready to tape up so I can start powder coating. Since I'm gonna be doing like a two-stage powder coat with a gold base and then the transparent red on top of it, I wanna do the rear ones first. They're a bit smaller and they're easier to work with. And I can actually do both of those at the same time versus the front. The front I'm gonna have to do one at a time just because of the size of it. So we're gonna go ahead and prep the rear ones. All right, got everything taped up, all the spots where I don't want any powder, I've got it all covered. So I got it in my little makeshift powder coating spot here. I have got my vacuum over here to suck all the dust out so I don't make a big mess. And then what we're gonna do is just gonna spray it in here. I'm gonna have to flip this around just to get some coverage, but I'm gonna go hit it with some gold right now and then let that cure onto here, and then we're gonna try the red right after that, see how well it sticks to the gold. Got everything covered as good as I could. Some of these spots right here, they were kind of lacking or they couldn't stick because of the Faraday effect. I may have to put a second layer on these once I bake these, but we'll go ahead, put it in here and hope for the best. All right, I've got the front caliper set up now. As you can see, I created some brackets right here, right onto the rack, so that way it balances perfectly there. So this one's gonna be a lot easier to powder coat than the other one that was hanging and getting that Faraday effect. I think this one will get a much better even coating versus the rears. The rears, I didn't like how they came out just because the metallic didn't cover as evenly as I thought it would be. On the rear, you saw we had some spots and all that. So the front, hopefully it covers evenly. I ended up putting another coat on here just to get some of these areas that were a little bit too smooth and it didn't have that rough metallic look. So I did it as good as I can on here. Hopefully when I put the transparent red on here, it's gonna look much better. Other than that, I'm pretty much ready to go on these. I just gotta let them cool down a little bit and then I'm gonna go do the red after this. We've got these things all nice and dry now. So what I'm gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and set up and do the lollipop red, which is the transparent, like clear top coat to go over this gold. Hopefully it turns out good and it turns out into a nice dark deep red with this gold metallic underneath. Looks pretty good. Hopefully it goes on nicely with this Eastwood gun. I heard some people have some problems and they have to actually hot flock it, which means they heat this thing up to like 400 degrees and then try to get the powder on here and let it melt at the same time. So hopefully we just put it in there straight with the gun and not worry about hot flocking, but if we have to hot flock, then we'll do that. Oh man, the coverage on this came out a lot better than I expected for this Eastwood gun. So the Eastwood gun has dual voltage. The high voltage and the low voltage was 1 and 2. And I read some reviews and what they were recommending, especially on a part like this where you have a lot of curves and Faraday cages in here, to do the low voltage to get in those tight spaces. That's what I ended up doing, where I couldn't get any of the coverage right here with the high voltage. So I did low voltage with high air and lots of powder. And then on the main big surfaces, I did the high voltage, and I did that just to get it to stick. The powder was sticking pretty good on the flat surfaces and the big surfaces on the high voltage, but all the little details and curves and everything were the low voltage, but it turned out great. So we're gonna go ahead and bake this baby for the time that it needs. I gotta look up what lollipop red is, but usually once you get up to 400 degrees, I think it's like 10 minutes in there after it hits 400 degrees. So the top side coverage came out pretty good, but the bottom side, you can see right there, it's very thin and there's not much clear or red on there. I might just hit this with some more powder just to make it better and smoother looking, just for my OCD-ness. Oh man, both of these things came out fire. Look at this thing. Wow, look at that gloss that came out of there and the metallic that you can see right through it. I was starting to get worried because it wasn't showing through when it started flowing out, but once it got out and hit temperature, it got glossy and shiny as hell. Look at that. The only problem I really ran into was the underside, and some of these edges didn't really get good coverage, so I actually recoated these like twice just to get all the edges that I missed. In addition, I got underneath, so I actually flipped this thing up and I was spraying it underneath to get it on, and I did it when it was warm, so I was basically hot flocking it, so it actually came out really good. Aside from that, like the backside, I didn't really waste too much material and put too thick of a layer of the clear top coat, and you can kind of see the gold go through that a little bit more. On the front side, I put a lot more of the transparent red just to cover that better, to get much better coverage and get more of the red out. But it came out a nice deep candy color with the gold going through and the clear red. All right, I was able to do the rears and get everything done and nicely glossed up on here, as you can see. On the rear, I actually did some stuff that I didn't do on the front. The first thing I did was actually powder coated the bottom side here with the thing upside down on a tray. And that way I was able to get all the coverage on the underside and in here and all the hard spots. And I let that cure in the oven first. Then once I was done with that, I mounted it on this tray so I could do the top. That way the top, I just concentrated on the face and on the top here to get everything nice and shiny. So that way my coverage is nice. On the front, I ended up having to do a couple layers just to get it right. But on the rear, I only had to do it twice just to get everything perfect. So as I mentioned earlier, if you guys want to get the best coverage and you're using a toaster oven and minimal space to do this at home, I really recommend placing these things upside down and just do the insides here first, get all the hard to reach areas if you even care about that part, over here and under here, and then do that, bake it, and get everything nice and coated first, and then do the top side. That way you can just concentrate on doing the top and the front and the face and everything to make it look nice and clean. As you can see, I tried to get as much coverage as I can on here just to get all the spots covered so I don't have any bare or missing paint anywhere. But this thing looks really good as far as my first time really ever doing this for calipers. So I want to thank you guys for joining me all the way to the end of this video on powder coating and figuring this out for these calipers. As you can see, it's a very time consuming and tedious job, especially if it's your first time doing it like me. And this lollipop red with the gold base turned out really nice and deep and metallic looking. I really like it and I can't wait to put it on the car. Go ahead and join me on my next video where I go ahead and change out all the seals, rebuild this thing, change out all these bleeders and everything and all that stuff and put it all back together so I can install it on my IS300. If you guys haven't subscribed to my channel to stay on top of all my different DIY videos, whether it's on the car, in the garage, or in the house, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. Turn on bell notifications to get notified every time I upload. Remember guys, for all these different DIY projects, if I can do it, you guys can do it. I want to thank you for watching and I'll talk to you guys next time.